There have been many blockbuster trades throughout the game's history, but what would have been some of the craziest ones never panned out for one reason or another. Today, we're looking at some of the most insane trades that almost happened. Number 10. Klay Thompson to the Timberwolves. In 2014, the Warriors were seen as just short of being contenders, and Klay Thompson and Steph Curry were just on the verge of establishing themselves as superstars within the league. At this point, Kevin Love was already seen as a legit star for Minnesota, but the relationship between Love and the Wolves had grown cold. Negotiations were ongoing, but among the trade offers from Golden State included players like Draymond Green, Harrison Barnes, David Lee, and of course Klay Thompson. Jerry West was a consultant for the Warriors at the time, and he threatened to resign from the Warriors staff if the team decided to trade Thompson. At the time, most Warriors fans would have desired Kevin Love over Thompson, but after West's ultimatum, the Warriors decided to hold on to their sharpshooting talent, and the rest is history. Number 9. Chris Paul to the Lakers. Of all the near trades on this list, this one was the closest to actually materializing, as for about a 45-minute window, it seemed as if it was a foregone conclusion. The Lakers would have given up both Pau Gasol and Lamar Odom, but the pairing of Paul and Bryant would have certainly made them contenders in the Western Conference. Los Angeles also had Andrew Bynum on the roster before he was inevitably traded for Dwight Howard 1 year later. Whether it was a trio involving Bynum or Howard, it would have been tough for Los Angeles to have got by the San Antonio Spurs or the Miami Heat, but they at least would have had a chance. Due to the recent resurgence of super teams, small market owners were furious at the Lakers' acquisition of Paul and demanded that the commissioner David Stern block the trade. Stern did just that, and later released a statement saying it was for, quote, basketball reasons. In the end, this is only now remembered as one of the most frustrating days of Lakers history. Number 8. Scotty Pippen to the Supersonics. If you've seen The Last Dance, then you'll remember Scottie Pippen having an icy relationship with the Bulls general manager, Jerry Krause. Due to this, Pippen was constantly among trade discussions, and one of the times he was in the summer of 1994. It was shortly after Michael Jordan's first retirement, and the Bulls management was considering a full rebuild. At the time, the player in consideration was the Seattle Supersonics dynamic power forward Shawn Kemp. Later on, Kemp would have made for an interesting running mate for Jordan in Chicago, while the tandem of Scottie Pippen and Gary Payton would have made for one of the greatest perimeter defenses that the game has ever seen. Fortunately for Chicago fans, the Bulls ultimately decided not to deal their star small forward as Pippen went on to win his 4th, 5th, and 6th championship with Chicago. Number 7. Kevin Garnett to the Lakers. Ultimately, the trade partner ended up being Boston, where KG went on to win his lone championship and the league's Defensive Player of the Year. But before that, one of the near destination landings for the big ticket was in Los Angeles. Garnett had always been vocal about his desire to play with Kobe Bryant, and it nearly happened as the Lakers were offering a trade package that included both Andrew Bynum and Lamar Odom. In this case, it was the Timberwolves who decided against it, as they held out for a better deal, which in their mind ended up being the Celtics offer in the summer of 2007. Would Garnett and Kobe have won championships together? With KG on the roster, it's unlikely that they ever make the Kwame Brown trade for Pau Gasol, so it's debatable whether or not that would have been a better thing for the Lakers in the long run, but at the very least, it makes for one intriguing what-if scenario. Number 6. Tracy McGrady to the 76ers. T-Mac's early years were famously spent with his fellow star, Vince Carter. The thing is, McGrady hadn't quite yet developed into the superstar that he would become in Orlando, so around the turn of the millennium, Toronto was prematurely evaluating their trade options. Before eventually settling on Orlando, McGrady was strongly being pursued by the Philadelphia 76ers. The main piece being offered was the shooting guard Larry Hughes. If the trade had materialized, it would have created a superstar tandem of Tracy McGrady and Allen Iverson, each as they were entering the prime of their careers. The two stars would have almost certainly dominated the Eastern Conference, considering how relatively weak the conference was in the early 2000s. Number 5. Charles Barkley to the Lakers. Turns out that a lot of the great what-if trades of basketball history involve the purple and gold, and in this case, it was for the all-time great power forward Charles Barkley. In 1992, the relationship between Barkley and the 76ers had soured, and although they eventually dealt Sir Charles to the Phoenix Suns, before that, he was nearly dealt to the Lakers. Reportedly, the package was Barkley and Ron Anderson for James Worthy and Eldon Campbell. It would have been just after Magic Johnson retired, but it also would have been just a few years before Shaq and Kobe were acquired. So it's no guarantee that the Lakers would have been contenders in the West. But at the very least, Charles was the league MVP the following season when he played in Phoenix, so he would have made them a viable threat until Shaquille O'Neal signed later on. Number 4. Steph Curry to the Milwaukee Bucks. In 2012, Steph Curry hadn't quite developed yet into the MVP superstar who would transform the league. In fact, he could barely stay on the court, as he was struggling through numerous ankle injuries. At the time, the Warriors were interested in acquiring the center Andrew Bogut from Milwaukee, and they did eventually get him in a trade, but one of the initial trade packages would have been involving Steph Curry. Obviously, a move like this would have had a tremendous effect on basketball history as we know it, as in this scenario, the Warriors franchise never becomes a dynasty. It's a large assumption to think that the Bucks would have simply drafted Giannis just a couple years later, when Curry almost certainly would have affected the draft position of the team. With that being said, considering how Milwaukee liked Giannis and picked him later in the first round, there's still a decent possibility that the tandem would have formulated. Number 3. Dirk Nowitzki and Steve Nash to the Raptors. Both were nearly traded together from the Dallas Mavericks to the Toronto Raptors. Both Dirk and Nash still had some things to prove as individual superstars, while Toronto's Vince Carter was at the height of his powers. The proposed trade was Dirk and Nash for Vince Carter and Antonio Davis. In hindsight, this is an obviously lopsided trade in favor of Toronto, but it didn't quite appear that way at the time, which is why Toronto's general manager was the one who ultimately declined the trade, opting to keep his superstar Vince Carter. Over the next several years, Dirk and Nash combined would each win numerous MVPs and an NBA championship, which left the Raptors organization feeling like they committed one of the more regrettable decisions of NBA history. Number 2. Kobe Bryant to the Chicago Bulls. In the summer of 2007, after back-to-back first-round exits to the Phoenix Suns, Kobe was extremely frustrated with the state of the Lakers, which is understandable since they had starters like Smush Parker, Luke Walton, and Kwame Brown. With a lack of a contender, which was promised to him when he signed a few years earlier, Kobe publicly demanded a trade elsewhere. Since Kobe had a no-trade clause, he gave the Lakers management a short list of teams that he was willing to go to, and among those teams was the Chicago Bulls. Reportedly, the Lakers and the Bulls had agreed to a deal, which would have sent Tyrese Thomas, Ben Gordon, Joakim Noah, and Luol Deng to Los Angeles for Kobe Bryant, but the Mamba ended up blocking the deal. The thing is, Kobe didn't want to go to a Chicago team that was devoid of talent, and in Kobe's own words, it would have been like going from one bad situation to another. Kobe said the only way he would approve a deal to Chicago is if Luol Deng was still there to play with him. Under these restrictions, the two teams were never able to make an agreement. Obviously, as a Lakers fan, I'm glad Kobe had a 20-year career with the Lakers, but it would have been at least interesting to see his career unfold in Chicago. He would have been playing in the shadow of the great Michael Jordan, and it would have been interesting to see if he could fill those shoes. It also would have put him in the same conference as LeBron James, where they would have inevitably had numerous battles in the NBA playoffs. Number 1. Michael Jordan and Clyde Drexler to the Houston Rockets. In my opinion, this is the greatest what-if trade of NBA history, and frankly, it's not even close. So let me first paint the picture. It's draft day 1984, and the Rockets have the first overall pick in the draft, followed by the Blazers with the second pick and the Bulls with the third pick. Obviously, in reality, we know how the draft went down. Hakeem Olajuwon was taken first by the Houston Rockets, Sam Bowie was taken second by the Blazers, which was a mistake to say the least, and Michael Jordan was taken third by Chicago. The thing is, there was a pre-selection trade in place which would have landed Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Clyde Drexler all as teammates on the Houston Rockets. So essentially, the Rockets already had Hakeem Olajuwon and the Hall of Famer Ralph Sampson on the roster. Both were superstar big men who were each capable of playing the center position. Due to this, some saw Houston's Ralph Sampson as an expendable asset. Portland was interested in acquiring their own star big man in an era that was dominated by players at the center position. So an offer was in place that would have sent the second overall pick and Clyde Drexler to the Houston Rockets for Ralph Sampson. Hakeem Olajuwon talked about this proposed offer in his book called Living the Dream, and he said that if the deal had gone through, the Rockets would have taken Hakeem with the first pick, Michael Jordan with the second pick, and obviously they would have had Clyde Drexler as well. Theoretically, this would have formed the scariest big three on paper that the league has ever seen. Believe it or not, it was actually Houston who declined the offer and decided to stick with their twin tower tandem of Hakeem and Sampson. It's not like Houston ended up being total failures for declining this offer, considering how they still went on to win multiple championships with Hakeem. But hypothetically, if they had Hakeem, Jordan, and Drexler all since 1984, how many championships could they have won? 8? 10? 12? Let me know your estimation. So now it's your turn. What is one of the crazier what-if trades that never panned out? I look forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.